Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. Do not adjust your technology. It is not the year 2020, although it certainly felt like that yesterday. But before we get back into perhaps the most egregious smash and grab in the history of this year, let's see who we've got on the show. Joe, welcome back. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, on the road to recovery. I've been very, very ill the last sort of 2 weeks, but we're back. And I was at the football yesterday, and it couldn't have gone any worse. So this year, really good so far. Loving it.
I feel you, brother. I feel you. We also welcome back Kurtis. Kurtis, mate, how are you keeping?
I'm groovy like a driving movie, my friend. Yeah, I'm pretty happy to be here. Happy to be talking to you guys. Not so happy with yesterday's performance, but we will talk about that momentarily.
We certainly will. I
How
mean,
are you, Tom?
I am still
Yeah, Tom.
recovering. I am still getting over COVID. It is still having a lovely time with my lungs. Just as I think I've turned the corner, it's like, pow! You can't breathe again, bitch. Apologies to
Shout
our
out to Tom's lungs, obviously.
breathing. Who needs to breathe? But yeah, I think I'm getting better. Anyway, less about my health issues and more about Brighton and Hove Albion's issues in front of goal. Am I right? But no. Let's before we get into that, there's quite a few things I want to talk about. The first of which is a man that really gets us ticking has been absent recently, and that is Adam Lallana. Now, it came out in De Zerbi's pre-match press conference before the Fulham game that he has got a bad injury and he will be sidelined for months. Joe, some really disappointing news there for Adam Lallana, who has had a really positive season, scoring goals, being really influential, on and off the pitch. Some really disappointing news coming out.
Yeah, I mean, we all know how good of a player he has been for so many years in a Southampton, Liverpool, and a Brighton shirt, in an England shirt as well. And we all know it's the injuries that have held him back from being, probably one of the best midfielders of his generation. Maybe that is a bit of a stretch, but who knows how far that could have gone, how well he was doing at Liverpool and stuff like that. And, how class he is on the pitch for us when he plays, and it really is gutting because of how good he's been this season. It's clear to see that he leads from the front. He's that voice that everybody needs on the football pitch, especially those young lads. Imagine coming in as a 17-year-old Facundo Buonanotte and playing alongside a Premier League and a Champions League winner. I know maybe he didn't play the part in the squad that much when he won those tournaments, but he's still in and about and got that experience. And it's got to be so influential for these young players that come into our football club to see a player like him and Danny Welbeck, to be honest. So it's really, really such a shame. But I hope that if this is to be the injury that makes him think maybe I should pack it in, that he stays with us and gets his coaching badges and stays in around the dressing room, because I've stressed so many times on this podcast before how important that voice is and how important the experience is. So gutting news, Tom.
Very much so. Kurtis, how much do you think we miss Adam Lallana's influence on the pitch?
Yeah, I think it's good to have that commanding voice in that part of the pitch. You always see that he's shouting something to someone, and he's got so much experience. I feel that benefits everyone around him. So to not have that on the pitch will be difficult. But I imagine he's the type of guy that will be floating around training sessions still, helping out and what have you. So he's not going to be gone. He will still be around, but he's just one less player that we have in that position. So that's going to be a bit tricky too.
Most definitely. Some more news that came out before the game is that Alexis McAllister's father, who is also his agent, was flying over to the UK to apparently discuss his son's future. Joe, a lot of noise already about the possibility of our World Cup winner leaving in the summer. regardless of what happens, Joe, I think we've got to bear in mind that Tony Bloom will not allow any departures for any less than his valuation of the money that he deems necessary to get a player to leave the club. What have you made of it all? Do you think it is just noise, or do you think it's about time that we sort of accept that because of where we are in the table, because of the pushes we are making in the right direction, that our best players will be the subject of interest?
Yeah, it's always going to be the case. Players do well at a club like Brighton, and you're going to get interest from the big six. Again, audio listeners, that's in what do you call it? What are they called, Tom? Quotation marks. That's the
Quotation
one.
mark.
Thank you. And I think it's inevitable that Alexis McAllister will leave. I think we're kidding ourselves if we say not. I think it really depends on what happens at the end of this season and where we find ourselves and what competitions we find ourselves in next season. If we get Europe, I say he stays. And I even think Moises Caicedo might stay if we get into Europe. I know that might be a bold call, but why not? But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where ever since we've been in the Premier League, ever since we've been doing well, there's always rumours and links that players are going to go here, go there, go everywhere. But I always have full faith that Tony Bloom is going to get the right decision for the football club. And if it's not time for a player to move on, he won't let them move on unless it's a Leandro Trossard situation where the contract's expiring, etc., etc. But that's where Tony Bloom is so good at getting those deals for the football club, and that's why we're doing so well. So I think it's just a matter of time, Tom, to be honest.
Now, Kurtis, he did sign, Alexis McAllister, he did sign a new contract just before the World Cup that extends his stay at Brighton. Do you think European football next season would be enough to tempt Alexis and even Moises Caicedo to stay at the Brighton and Hove Albion?
Maybe. Hold on one second. Just the cat. Alexis potentially over Caicedo. I think. I sort of already think Caicedo's foot's out the door, personally. But the statements that have already come out from Alexis's father and stuff, saying that how much he loves the club, how much he loves the individuals and stuff. I think that's really good to hear. But in one way, I'm very glad it's happening now, because hypothetically, if a deal was put into place sort of principally, and then we have time to look for someone and address that situation, it's good, as opposed to, I don't know, a week before the end of the window. So that this is good. It's happening now. I mean, I don't want him to leave, but I echo a lot of what Joe was saying. I feel like if we get to that European position, he could potentially stay, and I would welcome that with open arms. So
I think what you said about it happening now, Kurtis, just goes to prove again how much, and people might view this completely different way, but how much respect Alexis McAllister has got for the football club, in saying that,
the
look,
amount of times
I
he's
want,
gone on record.
yeah. Exactly. Like he'll be saying to us, these are my ambitions, but I'm contracted at this club, and I'll play for this club until the day that I don't. But I want bigger ambitions. That for me is completely fair enough, and then gives the club time to get the replacements in.
Well, he's not going to go anywhere until Tony Bloom has got what he wants out of the situation.
Right, exactly.
I mean, he's going to want a tidy amount of cash, ola, clams, shekels. You know what I mean? How much do we realistically think he's worth, though, to the club?
I'm going to use inverted commas here. A Chelsea journalist, that's the word that's in inverted commas, thinks that he's worth about 35 million. Now, Joe, Moises Caicedo, rumour has it that Brighton battered away bids of around 65, 70 million, albeit in January towards the end of the window. So that's an important context. But if we're batting away those sort of figures for Moises Caicedo, Alexis McAllister at 35 million is laughable.
Yeah, and there's still age on McAllister's side. It's not like he's 28, 29, pushing on towards what should be his prime. He's only going to get so much better. And we saw how much of an unbelievable player he could be on the world stage, the biggest stage in football. And he's just won a World Cup alongside Lionel Messi, of all people. And it's mind blowing. And anyone thinks that £35 million is going to get you Alexis McAllister's signature, you need a good, long, hard look at yourself, because we are not letting Alexis McAllister leave for anything less than 80. And I think even 80 is low.
Yeah, it's one of those things we've said before. Unless Tony Bloom gets what he believes to be a fair cash, what's the word I'm looking for, compensation for McAllister leaving, nothing's going to happen. Especially as Kurtis has already alluded to, most likely going to lose Moises Caicedo at the end of the season. I can't see Bloom sanctioning losing our two main midfielders without some serious cash injection. But we are digressing. We are procrastinating because I don't think we really want to talk about the game that happened yesterday. And who can blame us? It was one of those things where it felt like we were back in 2020, because Brighton it was the most one-sided 0-0 I'd seen since Boogate. The infamous Leeds game where billions of Brighton fans booed Brighton at the final whistle. Of course, it was the main reason that G Potts left, because we needed a history lesson. But anyway, less about that. But it had echoes of that sort of game until the last minute. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk really briefly then, Joe, about the starting 11, which saw Evan Ferguson come in for Dennis Undav in what I believe was probably at the moment our strongest starting 11, with Sanchez in goal, a back four of Joel Veltman, Lewis Dunk, Adam Webster, Pervis Estupinian, and then the holding midfielders of Caicedo and Alexis McAllister, with Gross just ahead of them, and then Mitoma, March out wide, with Ferguson up top. For me, Joe, that's probably our strongest 11. What do you think?
Yeah, I was extremely happy when I saw the starting 11. At the moment, you'd probably say you bring in Adam Lallana if he was fit. You would love to see him in there. And I think as I alluded to at the start when you were talking about his injury, we really miss him. But that is still a really solid starting 11. And I'll always be happy to see that, to be honest. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, you can't put that starting 11 together again because we didn't beat Fulham. But, we absolutely battered Fulham. Let's not beat around the bush there, because it was, as you say, Tom, the most one-sided 0-0 you'll ever see, until obviously they gone and bloody nicked it, which is the biggest robbery in a football match in a long time. Since last week, actually, the biggest robbery in football since last week. But yeah, no complaints. I thought Evan Ferguson was energetic and really good. Amazing to see that his injury wasn't as bad. I was really fearing the worst for him when I saw him go off against Liverpool. And yeah, I don't think you could get any stronger, as you said.
Yeah, at the moment with injuries and what have you, the way the squad is just looking, it is probably our best starting 11. And let's not kid ourselves here. It wasn't some, Brighton were creating chances, Kurtis, hatfuls of chances. I mean, I was making notes as I was watching the game, because I do, and I had at least 15 chances. Now that I'm not saying they're all on target. A lot of them perhaps half chances, narrowly wide. But just I'm looking over them in the first 10 minutes. I mean, Evan Ferguson blazed one over the bar. March shot just wide. Pervis broke into the box and he went out for a corner. There was just chance upon chance upon chance upon chance, but Brighton just could not take them. And I know I keep joking about it, but it genuinely felt like we were watching Brighton from a couple of seasons ago. Really, really frustrating day in front of goal.
Yeah, I mean, the stats go something like 21 total shots and 7 of them on target, which is madness in comparison to their 5 shots and 2. And yeah, when it finished, I was just like, wow, that is the most Brighton thing I've could have got out of this game. It was there's only it's really 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 frustrating, but it always boils down to the fact of like everyone always says, oh, we need a better striking option and stuff like that, but you know, the strikers that we have to put away the chances that they have, and you know, I don't know, Solly had a few chances and whatnot, but it just wasn't to be. And it's just one of those games. I mean, we've been riding a very good wave as of late, and we can't win them all. And I feel like performances like this is what makes teams better. I feel like, you know, sometimes it takes situations like this to make you realize where you are weaker, and then you can improve on that. So hopefully this, you know, helps spur the lads on, because you know, we've got, I think, Stoke next, and then we've got West Ham, I think, after that. And, you know, I'm not going to go ahead and say we're going to beat West Ham, because we do have a good record against them. But, you know, this is a good chance for us to pick up points there. So hopefully we can, you know, pick our heads up off the ground a bit and just get going and get some more points on the table. So,
I mean, Joe, I asked this to Toby in the last podcast because, from my perspective, the last 3 games have followed a very similar pattern. We've come against 3 teams that are very happy to sit back and just make us work for it. Bournemouth, where we did score a last-minute winner. Palace, where we came away with a single point, and then obviously yesterday, where we came away with 0 points. Do you think perhaps that after, you know, having that period of just scoring goals galore, we're sort of returning back to a bit of normality? Because yesterday, as I say, it looked like Brighton were almost back to that way of trying to score the perfect goal, too many touches, which has been very different from the games where we saw us scoring 3, 4, 5 goals at a time sometimes. What do you make of it? Is it just a blip?
Yeah, I think it's a case of teams seeing how many goals we're scoring. I mean, you know, it's so easy to focus on us and apologies. So easy to focus on us and the mistakes that we're making, and the chances we're missing, this, that, and the other, and how we're playing, and whether it's changing. But you have to look at there is another Premier League football team involved there. There is another Premier League football team who have tactical meetings, who are a really good team, and they're going to look at us, see how many goals we're scoring, and want to thwart that. And teams have done that perfectly well over the last couple of games. So it comes as no surprise that teams might be slightly working us out, but I've got full faith that De Zerbi will change the way we play ever so slightly. Fans won't notice, but other teams will. Such fine margins in the Premier League, and the tactical battle that goes on the sideline, I don't think people quite realise how much it plays in the game. You can look at football from it depends how you want to watch football, really. You can look at it from the surface, or you can really delve deep into it. And when you delve deep into it, you see tactical battles all over the pitch, and it just depends who's winning those individual battles. And you know, it's a blip. We'll get back to winning ways. I've no doubt. We're creating the chances. We just have to be more clinical. And when things get frustrating, maybe players snatch at chances a little bit more. Maybe the belief has gone down. We've spoken about confidence on this podcast so many times. That confidence has to come back up. We've got Stoke next. I'm taking nothing away from Stoke at all. We know what happened against Charlton. We saw what happened against Middlesbrough and how that mentality can shift. We scored 5 goals there. Hopefully, we can go into that game with a really strong mentality, get scoring goals again, and bring that back into the league. I think it's just a belief thing from our team's perspective. But as I say, you have to look at another Premier League team that are playing against us and battling with us tactically all over the pitch.
I think you could. We'll talk about Fulham's tactics later, but you do raise a good point, Joe. Of course, the whole point of Fulham is to stop us from scoring. But I think the thing that frustrated me the most was that I don't think Leno really had to pull off any saves that I was like, wow. A lot of them were straight at him, good height, and it was very similar against Palace. You know, always putting the shots pretty much straight at him. But as you say, that's something that the boys can work on the training pitch. But you know, we have to just sort of like we have to just move. There's nothing we can really do, because obviously not scoring is the reason we didn't win, which I know sounds really daft, but it is true, and we'll come on
Who
to that
invited
later.
Michael Owen on this podcast?
I know, right? If you don't score, you don't win. But I mean, one thing that a lot of fans have criticised Kurtis is our set pieces. I lost count of how many corners we had yesterday that didn't beat the first man, and it's not something that's an isolated incident. It's happening pretty much week in, week out. And then when we did have a corner that did beat the first man, Lewis Dunk had a free header and it went off target. So the set pieces are becoming a bit of a target for fans on social media. What have you made of Brighton's set pieces this season?
I think it's fair criticisms, to be honest. I mean, we used to be fairly good at our set pieces. I remember we would usually get a fair amount of headers and things from corners and stuff. And yeah, and now every time there's a corner, I don't expect anything to ever come of it, or it's frustrating. I'd imagine it's kind of difficult though, because I can imagine they're training very hard in these scenarios, but sometimes it just doesn't quite transition to the actual game. So clearly something is getting lost in translation somewhere in the middle there. I'm sure they'll go back to the drawing board and they'll address it. But it's very frustrating, but I do believe the criticism is valid.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, yesterday Dunk had a free header that was off target. Webster had a free header against Palace that I believe was either off target or blocked or saved or whatever. So just we've spoken about goals needing to come from elsewhere on the pitch, and I think Dunk has only scored one goal this season, and that was the dodgiest deflection off a Lamptey shot that you'll ever
What
like
do you
to
mean?
see.
He knew about it. He was deliberate. He knew what he was doing.
But no, I mean, I think we need to get Webster and Dunkey on the score sheet. We need those goals to help out, because, as Joe says, it's. I think a lot of pressure we put on Ferguson, March, and Matoma, but goals need to come from elsewhere on the pitch. And I think when we do eventually put in a good corner like that with Dunk, free header, you'd bet you have mortgage on him to get that on target 9 times out of 10. But it was just another one of those. It's not going to be our day in front of goal. And it was just really frustrating because, as I say, it just felt like it was Brighton from a couple of seasons ago. We had so many good chances, and it was just way too easy for Fulham. And I think if we had have scored, then the next topic we wouldn't really have to talk about, which is Fulham's incredibly cynical tactics. Joe, some absolutely disgraceful time wasting from about 14 minutes in. Feigning injury, feigning head injuries. And we will talk about him on his own. The ref completely allowing this to happen. No sort of repercussions, no yellow cards dish out. It was just a disgraceful display of sportsmanship, in my opinion. What did you make of Fulham's tactical choices?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always very I sort of hold back when I see an injury when I'm in the ground, because you don't really know how serious it's going to be. And I think there was a moment where their left back went down after a challenge from, I think it was Solly March, and he looked in a considerable amount of pain. And I was like, everyone else around me was like, oh, get up, get up, get up. And I was thinking, I'm just going to hold back here because he might actually be really hurt. 2 minutes later, he's up on his feet. He's running around like nothing's happened. Literally nothing. And the players know now, with the change of rules, that if they go down and they hold their head or they hold their face, the game's going to stop for at least a minute or so.
And rightfully so. I just want to point this out. Obviously, we saw what happened
rightfully
with Chelsea.
So.
With Asclepet, we saw that yesterday with Chelsea.
But it's damn right disrespectful to the players that actually do get head injuries, because it's going to change the perception from the fans in the stands. People are going to. That's why I stop and wait until I see what's happened afterwards. And then when I see they're fine and they were time wasting, that's when I get annoyed. But players know that if they want to stop a game, all they have to do is go like that and fall to the ground, and the referee will stop the game. And it stops the flow of the game completely. And that's what they want to do. They want to break our rhythm. And whether that is a tactic, whether that is definitely something they talk about behind the scenes, I have no idea. I don't know how you go about stamping out the game, to be honest, because if teams want to do it, they're just going to do it. And the referee, as you mentioned, Tom, we will talk about him, but he just needs to completely get a grip of the game and tell them, look, if one, this time's being added on, and it needs to be fairly added on, by the way. What was it at the end? 6 minutes. I'm sorry, but Fulham probably wasted about 10. It needs to be like it was in the World Cup, where they literally had a counter and they were adding on like every single stoppage into one.
Yeah,
That's
or they
when
could
you get a
do,
fair game.
or they could do what they do in rugby. Every time that play stops, you pause the clock.
Yep. And another leaf that football could take out of rugby's book. Imagine my shock.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to see Fulham's tactics because they clearly couldn't compete with us on the park. You know, they were probably one of the worst teams we've seen this season in terms of just they created nothing, they did very little. But they did what I think Villa did. They did what Forest did. They just wasted time from the first half. Within quarter of an hour, they were already slowing the game down, wasting time.
You know what? I was really looking forward to such a good game of football because of how well Fulham have been doing this season. I've watched a lot of Fulham this season. They've been playing some really good, nice football. And I was looking forward to seeing a really good, high quality game of football. And then they come and do that. It's just taking that soul out of football where the two teams go up against each other and just battle it out to be the best team. But no, they're just going to chuck themselves on the ground because they can't be bothered to play the game.
It's frustrating because I was saying beforehand, I said, I think this is going to be a tougher task than Palace. You know, like, you know, considering where Fulham are in the table and everything, I thought this is going to be a real battle and I'm really excited for this. And then to hear that that's just what they were doing the entire game, I was like, okay. But also, it was frustrating because I was like, how don't we have anything from this yet?
Yeah. You almost expect it from, and I'm loath to use the phrase, teams like Forest or Bournemouth, who are really struggling. I say struggling, they're really battling to stay in the Premier League. But a team in Fulham's position, they shouldn't have to resort to that sort of play acting. And for someone who hasn't watched Fulham at all, because I don't watch a lot of football that isn't Brighton, it's just, you know, how I've always been. I watched it and I thought, how on earth are this team behind us in the table? Just behind us. How on earth are this team in the top 8? Because they were just awful. You know, a lot of people are calling it anti-football. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it does feel like there was only one team who wanted to play yesterday. Only one team that wanted to win, and it wasn't the team that, ironically, didn't get the win. And part of that was because, you know, the way that the game was being played by the opposition. Fulham weren't interested in playing football. They were interested in rolling around on the floor, which was really frustrating. And the next part of the equation that's equally as frustrating, Joe, is the ref, who, as you've alluded to, allowed it to happen. It seems that every week we are talking about an incompetent official. We've just had, is it Howard Webb, came to the training ground, have a meeting with De Zerbi, which we'll talk about a bit later. He's just come to the training ground to have a meeting with our head coach about last week's incompetent officials, and we're seeing more of it again this week. Joe, I lose my patience with the level of officials in the Premier League. It is abysmal.
Yeah. And it's not even just, you know, a lot of people could be saying, oh, it's because you're not winning the games and you're looking deeply into it, blah, blah, blah. But it's not even just our games. It's across the whole of the Premier League. There's even been some more controversial decisions today in the Man United and whoever they're playing, Leicester game, where Man United should have had a red card. Imagine my shock. Manchester United player doesn't get sent off, but then a goal that rules there gets scored for Manchester United. Marcus Rashford's foot looks literally offside, but the green line that VAR have drawn is over his foot. So you can't see it. You can't come to a conclusive decision that it is definitely offside. And it's these inconsistencies that are making us so unbelievably frustrated. I'm not blaming the referee for us losing the game. I'm not sitting here saying that we're getting ganged up on by any stretch. I'm saying that across the board, as you were saying, Tom, how frustrated you were just then, it is simply not good enough. We've just seen also Lee Mason get sacked for it, which is brilliant, by the way, because he's probably one of the worst of the lot.
Do you remember? I'm sure you do. The free kick dunk
Yes.
against West Brom.
Yeah.
Blew the whistle. Dunk kicked it, went in, and then that was just a fiasco. I think that was the last game he refereed because it was so incompetent. I mean, you're right, Joe. We can't. A lot of people on Twitter, especially, have been blaming the referee. The truth of the matter is, the referee didn't stop us from scoring. That responsibility lies with us. We needed to score because if we had scored, Fulham wouldn't have been able to use those tactics, or they would have been foolish if they had, because they would have been losing. So they wouldn't have done that. It wouldn't have mattered if we had scored 1 or 2 in the first half, which we arguably should have done, because the ref's going to. We can't control the way the ref officiates the game. We can't control the way Fulham choose to play the game. So it's the age-old adage: you can only control the controllables, and we didn't do that well enough yesterday. So the ref was incompetent. My favourite part, Joe, was when in the second half, the beginning of the second half, Estupinian was fouled by Tete, and Darren England gave them a free kick. You want to talk about incompetence?
Yeah. I was halfway through applauding him for getting a decision right, and then I see him point the other way, and I was just head in hands. Like you become almost numb to it, to be honest. You go to a Premier League game, you expect these officials to be that bad. You expect to be shouting at the linesman because they've got a decision wrong. You expect to, I always find it funny, whenever a linesman gets a decision wrong, because of where I sit, Tom, I'm quite close to them. I normally take off my glasses and offer it to them because they clearly need it. And the VAR as well. I hate to bring him into this conversation, but Graham Potter said that it's human beings that are making these decisions, and with human beings, you're never going to get consistency, which I somewhat agree with. But there is a line, there is a but. You've got the technology right there in front of you, state-of-the-art technology that has been, we saw used so well at the World Cup. That technology can be improved even more. We should be, again, I'm saying this again, Tom, we should be able to hear the referees. What are they saying? Are they literally just going, oh yeah, Lee, we should probably make a decision in a minute, but I'm just going to keep these fans waiting a little bit longer just to piss them off. Wait for it. Offside. Yeah, that's offside. Yeah, tell them in about 5 seconds just to piss them off even more. Again, we're sat in the stands. We don't know what the bloody hell's going on.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, I will say one thing. Darren England, he did get the penalty shout for Veltman. He did get that right. Veltman initiated the contact, and upon seeing replays, and even Veltman himself said after the game it was the right call. So he did get that big decision right. But throughout the game, there were so many niggly little decisions that he got wrong. And Kurtis, we've already alluded to it already. Fulham spent most of the game time wasting, but the referee didn't give any cards out for that time wasting. The minutes that were added on at the end seemed way too few. You should have added more. It could have been at least 10 minutes, possibly even more, because the only way you're going to stop time wasting is by either booking players, and I mean consistently booking players. None of this sort of, if you do it 4 or 5 times, then I'll book you. It needs to be, do that again, I'm going to book you. Or going up to the captain of Fulham or whichever team it is and saying, the next player on your team that time wastes, I'm going to book them. Because that's what they do in rugby. You literally hear referees in rugby says, if your player does want something like that again, I'm booking them. It doesn't matter if they haven't done it yet. If that's the first time they've done it, they're getting booked. And that's what it needs to be like. They need to stamp it out. It's the
introduce the sin bin. I tell you, introduce it. 10 minutes for a yellow card. That will stop players doing probably 70% of the things that they do.
Exactly.
So
We were
yeah.
supposed to be seeing the end of diving because we were told that simulation would now get you a yellow card. That's not consistently enforced. So there are so many different ways that referees could do this, or officials could do this. As they say, they could stop the clock like they do in rugby, sin bins, consistency in cards. But it didn't help us yesterday, Curtis. I know I'm wittering on, but I'm
No,
so
that's
grumpy.
fine. I mean, like
Um,
to be honest with you, I'm sort of sick to death of talking about it at this point. You know, like, and you hear about all these people that are cancelling their season tickets because they've fallen out of love with the game because of all this other stuff, and you know, at certain points you've gotta be like, yeah, I sort of get it. I understand, you know, why, because you go to a game and you know you're watching a performance like that, and it's bad enough when we can see it happen, and we're like, why isn't anything we're doing? And they're not doing anything about it. Like it just takes so much out of you and out of the game. It's just so incredibly frustrating. But like I said, I'm just done with sort of talking about it because it just feels like that we can talk about it as much as we want, but nothing seems to change. You know, like they'll put out apologies. They'll fire people, but more people will come in to take over their position, and it'll be just as bad. So it's just this continue. It's like having a one kid at the top of a Ferris wheel who's constantly spitting down on the person at the bottom. That's what it is. It's just constantly doing that. It's just this constant rotating wheel of horrible.
I love that phrase, a rotating wheel of horrible. And I don't want to prolong the point too much, but I think it was
Welcome
Danny
to
Murphy.
Referees Obsessed.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
I think it was Danny Murphy on last week's Match of the Day. They said that they want to be talking about players. They want to be talking about coaches and tactics and all the wonderful things that football can be. And it just seems that every week we're talking about referees and officials. And of course, we look through our lovely blue and white striped specs and we understand that there is some degree of bias here. But I think even the most ardent of Fulham fans could acknowledge that perhaps not only did they get away with one in terms of the result yesterday, they got away with one in terms of how poor the referee was. And it wasn't just us that thought this. It was also our beloved coach, Roberto De Zerbi, who got a red card in the tunnel post-game for confronting the referee, Joe. It's fantastic to see that passion from Roberto De Zerbi. Reminds me a lot of a certain Gus Poyet in that regard. But it shows you that this frustration that we're feeling is also felt amongst the coaching staff of the teams as well.
And it validates that frustration even more as well. Like you can go home from a football game being a bit annoyed with the referees, talking to your friends, and then your friends saying, oh, but it wasn't that bad, but we should have scored the goals and blah, 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 blah. But when you've got your manager fuming and getting himself sent off in the tunnel, as I say, it validates it even more. And if De Zerbi is unhappy with it, then I'm most certainly unhappy with it. And, you know, again, you're probably going to take Howard Webb coming to the training ground and wasting De Zerbi's time again with a meeting to explain why the officials are so poor. I'm not saying anything majorly controversial happened yesterday by any means, like nothing near to drawing the line on the wrong player. But eventually something is going to happen again, and we're going to be sat here like losing our heads over it. And as Kurtis said, I'm just sick to death of like. Why have we got to talk about the bloody referees every single frigging podcast? Almost swore. I should have sworn anyway because
I want to
Tom
be
swore at
talking
the start.
about I want to be talking about good individual performances, not bad ones out there. At once, I'd love to be like, oh, Lee Mason, he was bloody great today. How good was he? You know, he was so fair and unbiased and all this other stuff. But like, it's just like
The thing is, Kurtis, I feel like to have a good refereeing performance, you come away from the game not even noticing that the referee was there. That's how it should be officiated.
Yeah, spot on. Roberto De Zerbi's post-match comments were hilarious. I didn't come to England to be stuck in meetings. Just, you know. And he's been very open about what he said. And he said, sometimes I like to get a red card. What a bad boy. He's the bad boy of coaching in the Premier League. And I'm absolutely here for it. But no,
Can I just say as well, though, Mikel Arteta can do whatever the hell he likes. Jurgen Klopp can do whatever the hell they like. Pep Guardiola can do whatever he likes. I don't see any punishments going to them over their last couple of antics on the sidelines. Did you see Arteta yesterday? He was absolutely fuming. He was even mocking the referee on the sidelines. Did he get a red card? No, he bloody didn't.
To be fair,
what does
not
this
against
mean,
that.
by the way? Does that mean he's going to be out for the Stoke game or the West Ham?
I think I've seen people
Is
say
it the league game? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I've seen people say it's the West Ham game.
Okay.
But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think yesterday was very much a case of the referee didn't want to be held accountable for his shoddy performance. And that's not the first time we've said that. But let's move on. I mean, we have to talk about the biggest robbery we've seen since that goal from them lot up the road. As I said, it felt very similar to the Boogate game against Leeds. Wave after wave after wave of Brighton attack. Absolutely nothing to show for it in the second half. And Fulham counter after a mix-up up top between the two substitutes, Undav and Buonanotte. And Solomon fires into the corner after a quick fire break. An absolute sucker punch. If you look up sucker punch in the dictionary, you'll see two things. You will see Fulham and you will see that lot up the road, because for the second time in a week, the second time in 8 days or whatever you want to call it, the team that has barely turned up have somehow managed to come away, Kurtis, with something. Frustration.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Frustration. Yeah, God, it was just like, it just took all the wind out of me. It did. I was just like, oh, for God's sake. But like, that's what you get when you make those sorts of mistakes, though. And we have to address that. Like, as much as that happened and stuff, like, we weren't good enough at the back there, and you can't make those mistakes with any team, otherwise things like that will happen. Yeah, it's just disheartening, isn't it?
Very much
when I saw the breakaway, because obviously I was in the stadium, saw for the breakaway, and I was like, oh, here we go. And then the ball hit the back of the net, and then the Fulham fans went mental. And like half of the stadium left, literally, when the ball hit the back of the net. I can't say I blame them, to be honest. I would never, and this isn't me saying I'm a better fan because I stayed to the end. I wouldn't do that, but it's like, oh, really? Why now? Like, I was thinking it might be another Bournemouth. We might nick something. And I was saying to friends before the game, if we get a point from this game, I would be happy. I would be happy with a point. I would begrudgingly take the point. It would be bittersweet because of how well we played, and we should have won the game. But considering the context of the game and where Fulham were, yeah, as you say, Tom, sucker punch upon sucker punch. And it just, that feeling doesn't shake. Seeing that net ripple and Fulham run away with that was, crap.
tough.
It just was.
But that is what happens when you don't take your chances. Same against Palace. We had ample opportunity to score. We didn't.
Well, go ahead, Joe. You go ahead.
Okay.
Go. Yes.
I'm going to put a positive spin on this, guys. Somehow, we've got 2 games in hand. Well, actually, by the time we get around to playing it, we'll have 3 games in hand because we still need to play Newcastle as well.
And it was nice of Liverpool to keep the score down yesterday so we can stay in 7th.
Exactly. So the fate is still in our hands, guys. So we've still got to believe that things will change and we will start getting the points again and start scoring the goals again.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Literally, you read my mind. I was going to say, like, blips like this will happen. We can't expect to just breeze through everyone, And it is very Brighton to happen in a performance like that, And again, these sorts of things will help us learn. And I think as much as it's horrible the way it happened. I feel like it's going to be very beneficial moving forward.
It will be if Roberto De Zerbi goes in and does what he needs to do, picks the boys up and says, "Come on, we can't have another game like that. Let's work on our shooting boots." And as we've already alluded to, Stoke is the perfect opportunity to perhaps bring some confidence back into the side. Of course, Stoke are going to be no pushovers. The age-old adage of, "Oh, can you do it on a cold Wednesday evening at Stoke?" It rings true. So we'll see if Roberto De Zerbi's boys can do it on a cold.
The thing is, I've got full faith. I've got full faith that Roberto De Zerbi will go in there and get the boys galvanized again, because we've seen it so many times where we have had disappointing results under De Zerbi. Charlton comes to mind, and the mentality switch after Charlton was ridiculous. And we went out and completely demolished teams after that. So I've got full faith that we'll see some change and we'll go on to have another really good patch.
Yeah, let's certainly hope so. I mean, to play devil's advocate a little bit, a lot of the chat on socials at the moment is saying that our European dream is in jeopardy by dropping points to Fulham, who have now overtaken us. Liverpool seem to have found a bit of form and are only behind us on goal difference. And now some people, Kurtis, even criticising the lack of January business as we find ourselves somewhat goal shy over the last 3 games. I mean, of course, we know that a loss often brings out, I'm not going to say the worst in people, but perhaps the more pessimistic side of people. What would you say to people who are now saying, the European dream is in jeopardy? Because this is, let's not beat around the bush. With Liverpool and Chelsea both stumbling, this is perhaps the best chance we're going to have in a long time to get European football. We need to take it.
I mean, I understand the concerns. Obviously, I mean, you want to be able to beat Fulham, for instance, who are also clearly fighting for Europe. I mean, they're a fantastic team who have had some really good performances. So that's why yesterday's performance hurts a lot more, I think, for a lot of different people, because if we beat a team like Fulham in the position that they're in, then that's really, really good. I remember saying it at the Palace game, like, oh, if we beat Palace, this is a good sort of like understanding of where the rest of the season's going. And then I was like, oh, that's what that was. But if we beat Fulham, and we couldn't. But I'm not concerned, honestly, about that. As I say, blip, bump in the road, those sorts of things, they're going to happen. But it's just how we carry ourselves from here and the performances that we put on from this point forward. I feel that really, really matters. And we've got to, as you say, put the shooting boots on and, just go for it. Go for it.
Most definitely. I mean, Joe, if we cast our minds back a year, okay, this time last year, Brighton were either about to begin their worst run of games or they were in the midst of their worst run of games.
A year ago today, we lost 3-0 to Burnley.
Okay, then, well, there you go. So we were in the midst of the dreadful run, the worst run of results that we had seen since 2007, and we still managed to claw our way into the top 10. Albeit we were 45 minutes away from finishing 13th. But it does go to show you how, your position in the table isn't determined by individual games. It's determined by runs of form. So what do you see as Roberto De Zerbi's sort of main coaching points for the next run of games? What is he going to be saying to the lads to galvanize them ready for what is going to be an inevitably important run-in if we are serious about finishing in a European space?
Well, yeah, he's come up before the Fulham game and he said how much he believes in his players and the level we've been playing at. I believe that he'll be saying, look, we are a really good footballing side. We showed it yesterday. We showed it against Palace. Yes, the results didn't go our way, but this is Premier League football, people. And I sound really boring when I say that, and I'm really sorry that I do, but you have to have a reality check sometimes, and that's what we're getting at the moment. And the people that are now, because of 2 disappointing results, saying that's it, our European aspirations are completely over. What is that mentality? We've got how many games to go? 12, 13? or 14. I don't know how many it is. We're still in the FA Cup. We've got to play Stoke again. I'm taking nothing away from Stoke, but we've got a really good chance to get further in that competition. And let's say we get a home tie in the quarterfinals, and then we get to the semis. Anything can happen. You have to keep dreaming. 3 weeks ago, we were on the top of the world, and just because of 2 poor results, everyone's feeling like that's it. Our dream's finished. Our dream's done. Why is that mentality there?
It's fickle fans, isn't it? You know, like as you
don't
say,
get it.
we could absolutely demolish Stoke and West Ham hypothetically, right? And that we're suddenly that's it. We're on a European going on the European tour again. Yeah, come on, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
But like I said, we could draw one of those games, and the people are like, I don't know, questions have to be. It's just so just pull
it's
your head out.
completely it is swings and roundabouts. Anything can happen. We've got a decent part of the season to go, and if the fans are already writing us off, then you might as well stay at home, honestly, because that mentality ain't going to shift at the Amex when we're trying to push for the best finish this football club's ever had. We had the best finish last season. It was amazing. The end of last season was absolutely phenomenal, and I loved it. Probably some of the best memories I've had following this football club. We can do that again. Why not? And under this coach, Roberto De Zerbi, who we've all absolutely adored so far, we just have to believe and just keep supporting. And the good times will come again. I've no doubt.
They will. Of course they will. We just have to we just have to do a goal or two. But no, let's talk about the FA Cup then. Let's look ahead a bit to Stoke. Just really quickly then, boys, because we're getting on to the hour. Kurtis, just really quickly, how would you line up? Would you go strong, full team of players from the starting 11, or would you rotate, maybe get the likes of Sami, Ento and Ciso, Buonanotte, some game time? Where do you stand on how strong to go against Stoke?
How have they been doing this season? Have they had do we know? No, any idea? Okay. Well, I'm going to say I'd like to see some rotation. Actually, I wouldn't mind seeing people like Enciso and Sarmiento and Buonanotte, who I thought looked pretty good in spats yesterday, from what I saw of him. Nearly scored a goal as well, but it was obviously offside. But yeah, I would like to see some rotation. Obviously, keep some experience out there to keep those lads grounded, but. Definitely, I'd like to see some people that on the fringes get some game time. I would like to see some more Undav, but I feel like they're going to want to play more Ferguson because he's had less game time recently. So yeah, sort of a good mixture, I think.
Decent. Same question to you, Joe. Where do you stand on the starting 11? Would you rotate?
Yeah, and so just to answer your question, Curtis, very quickly, Stoke are 19th in the Championship, so they're not having an amazing season by any stretch. And they lost yesterday 1-0 to Blackpool. And I know a Blackpool fan, so I'm sure he'll be very happy with that. I would start with a really strong core, and I would play some of the young guys around that core. I would like to see probably 8 starters with 3 and obviously Jason Steele. I think he's earned his place to start in the cup. Absolutely. I even actually wouldn't have been that disappointed if Jason Steele started in the league, to be honest. I think he's really impressed me when he has played, to be honest. And I know we've not seen much of him. And I stand by Sanchez fully. I'm not saying it's Sanchez's fault, but I really like Jason Steele. But yeah, I'd like to see some of the youth and the good bulk of our Premier League starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'd rotate quite a bit. I say quite a bit. I'd go with Steele at the back, then Veltman at right back, Webster and Van Heck in the middle, maybe Lamptey at left back, because we saw Purvis hobble off yesterday, which I think was just precautionary. But just for the sake of being precautionary, I'd be tempted to maybe give him 45 minutes, perhaps, because I think it's in 10 days' time. So we've got plenty of time, but I don't want to risk Purvis, because if he does pick up a career career, season-ending injury, we could be in real trouble. I'd start Matoma. I think he's looked a bit undercooked, shall we say, last 3 games. So maybe getting him up against some championship defenders might help bring that confidence back. But I'd definitely start Sarmiento. I'd probably start Buonanotte. If he's fit, maybe Billy Gilmore, and even the new boy Yasin Yarari. I can't pronounce his name. The new Swedish lad. I'd be quite tempted to start him, perhaps, or at least give him some game time in the second half. But we've seen De Zerbi go quite strong in the cup, so I would not be surprised in the slightest to see a very strong lineup. As you say, Kurtis, perhaps even led by Ferguson to get him some game time back into the legs after being injured a few games ago. Let's have score predictions before we sign off then, gents. Joe, score prediction against Stoke, please.
Hopefully a nice, comfortable 3-0 win for Brighton.
Oh, that would be very nice. Kurtis, score prediction, please.
To echo Joe from a couple of weeks ago, 5-0. No.
All right, let's not bring that back. Come on now.
I think I'd like to think, I don't know, like 4-0, something like that. That would be really nice. Some of the fringe players to get some goals, I think, would be really, really good. And McAllister. I'd like McAllister to score something because I feel like he needs it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for a good confidence boost for the likes of, as I said, Matoma, McAllister perhaps as well. So I think as long as we score a couple, I think, that will hopefully give us some galvanisation, taking us into West Ham, where we can hopefully continue our very fine record against them. But it will be in 10 days the next time Brighton and Hove Albion take
I'd
to the
just
pitch.
say it's really nice actually to have a break from football. It's been doing me in recently, so it's nice to have that sort of 9-10 day stretch that we're not going to play a game. We can relax a bit.
Which also means, viewers, you won't be able to see our lovely faces for a good 11 days or so, and listeners, you won't be able to hear our dulcet tones.
But you will see Nacho Friend's tricky goals in League One.
He's back.
Road to FIFA is coming back, guys. So if you enjoyed Kurtis's little FIFA video side series, it's coming back next week. We'll get it uploaded and keep you updated on.
And it's going to be a constant thing. I lapsed on it a bit because I'm lazy. But we're going to continue it, and I've got loads of really funny stuff planned for it. So watch this space.
Amazing. And if all else fails, you've got an entire back catalogue of Albion Obsessed videos to watch and listen to.
We're almost at our 100th episode, guys. We're getting there.
And you know what you can do also? You can go back and watch the documentary that these two made on the Brighton shirts. It's so good. Look, all those, yeah. It's really bloody great, and they put so much effort into it. Go and watch it. And follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. We've just literally reached 100 followers on TikTok, so thank you very, very much. I'm going to be making some really cool content over there, so join us in all the good spaces.
Join us on the TikTok to keep it real, kids, because I'm a 33-year-old who doesn't understand these sorts of things. And on that bombshell, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. And wherever you may be, whenever you may be, keep it real. We'll see you next time. Take care.